Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome back, or for the very first time, to the Farts and Craps Show, where I'm going to be your host for this video, Danjo McCraps, and today we have episode 7 of Stick Tips. Today is the big one. We are going to be talking about the very popular 8BitDo SN30 Pro Plus. This is my G Edition controller. Running on firmware version 4.01, which is the latest as of July 22nd, 2020. So first I would like to address the required supplies that we are going to need. You're going to need a T6 gauge Torx screwdriver, a 2.0 gauge bit Phillips screwdriver, a prying tool, and mounting putty. For this fix, I personally used Loctite, but feel free to use whatever brand you're comfortable with. If you don't exactly have a T6 or a 2.0 gauge on those screwdrivers, a similar gauge should work. I don't think anything larger than T6 will fit the security screws, but it is possible. So starting out, we have 4 security screws on the back. 2 of them are actually hidden under the sticker in the battery compartment, so I went ahead and removed it because I wasn't sure if there was going to be more than 2 in there, but it is just the 2, so you could have... So I could have just pulled back the sticker on the corners if I wanted to keep it on there, which in retrospect I would have liked that better. You're also going to have to remove the L2 and R2 caps temporarily on the triggers. These are just snapped into place, but they are very firmly mounted on there, so I actually did use my prying tool because I tried removing them by hand and it just felt like I was using way too much force. So definitely the prying tool there. And basically we're going to want to remove the bottom half of the shell from the top half of the shell. So just run that prying tool around the controller after you remove the security screws, and you will see it come apart. And basically take the left, when it's facing up, the left handle and open the controller to the right. For as you see here, there is a ribbon cable on the right hand side of the controller. So if you pull from the other side, you do run the risk of damaging that cable. There is a security snap on the ribbon cable that keeps it pretty firmly in place, but still, if you're doing this by hand without a prying tool, the amount of force required to undo the clips that are holding the front half and the bottom half of the shell together could potentially damage the ribbon cable. So you want to be careful of that. On the left hand, the bottom half, it's really just the 2 analog sticks and the 2 rumble motors, and there's not a whole lot of other components. We're going to be focusing on the right, or the top half, which has the D-pad, the front-facing buttons, all of that. And there are 6 Phillips head screws holding that PCB in place. So you're going to want to remove those so you can free the main PCB, which looks like this. And I do really like this PCB a lot. 8BitDo did improve the design slightly from the SN30 Pro USB, which I made a previous video about. And this one just looks and feels higher quality. I do feel like they isolated the connectors a bit better, which is very nice. And of course they did upgrade the USB to USB Type-C, so it allows for faster charging of that included lithium-ion battery. Of course, if that battery starts to wear out on you, you can just remove it and use AA's. Now, once you remove that PCB from the front half, you will see this. Essentially the D-pad, which is what we're going to be focusing on, and the conductive rubber membranes for the ABXY and start and select buttons. Now, this is after cleaning the conductive rubber membrane for the D-pad. Now, I have read online that using isopropyl alcohol, about 80 or 90%, is the way to go, and just a small brush, like a toothbrush. This part of the fix is completely optional, but in my opinion, this does make the fix much more comprehensive, because in my opinion, the conductive rubber membranes on the D-pad are just too soft, so it gives that squishy feel. So the two criticisms of the D-pads on 8BitDo's Super Nintendo style controllers is that A, it's too mushy, and B, the D-pad just slides around. So doing this part of the fix as well will improve the mushiness of that conductive rubber to make it more stiff. So essentially, you're going to want to hold it by the little ring part and run it under hot water, like as hot as you can, like hotter than you can withstand, essentially. Some people actually boil the membranes. I mean, you can always do that if you want, but I took a new toothbrush out of the pack, some baking soda and peroxide toothpaste, and I just carefully brushed this entire thing down. And it's partially due to the agitation and the cleaning, and partially due to the running under hot water for a while and then air drying or blow drying. Just don't dry the conductive rubber membranes with any sort of cloth, towel, microfiber. Anything like that will actually leave a little bit of residue on it, as pretty much every type of cloth, towel, that sort of thing is going to have some kind of dust or material that is just going to be attracted to this material. So as you can see, once it's dried, or while it's drying, just putting it on a hard surface, a hard clean surface, is the best way to go. So moving on to the next step. Essentially, you're going to want to take the D-pad, the hard plastic of the D-pad, out of the shell, and grab a chunk of the mounting putty and divide it by half, and divide those halves by half. So you have 4 equally sized small portions of mounting putty. And essentially what you're going to want to do is, after making sure they are all the same size, roll them into little balls, and then flatten them so you have a very thin, hopefully even disc, slightly larger than the size of the divots on the underside of the D-pad, as you can see on the left there. And essentially we're just going to lay them into the middle and make sure that the discs don't quite reach the edge of the plastic. Now that's an important detail, because if they are overlapping, if they do go over the edge of the D-pad, then they are going to be rubbing against the plastic housing on of the shell, and then you're going to have a different problem in the feel department. So essentially, after you get those on there, and again, make sure when you're doing this, make sure your hands are very clean, because you want to try to make sure that mounting putty is free of like dead skin cells, dirt, dust, that sort of thing. So I highly recommend washing your hands before starting this process and throughout the process, actually, before the key steps, essentially. Handling the conductive rubber membranes, doing before that is very important. Before handling the mounting putty, also very important. And essentially, what this is going to do, in case you didn't watch the previous episode on the SN30 Pro USB, is going to give the nubs on the underside of the conductive rubber, which the putty is going to make contact with, create their own little divots in the putty. So it's not going to slide around at all. And I considered putting a fifth disc of the putty on the center because there is a hole in the middle of the conductive rubber membrane. And I thought, well, that'll keep it even more firmly in place, but it will also be making contact with the PCB. And that's bad because then you're introducing potential dirt or like chunks of the putty like falling into the controller essentially, or onto the PCB, like messing with communications and that sort of thing. So just the 4 pieces that are going to be making direct contact with the conductive rubber membranes is essentially, as I found in my testing, the best way to go. And that's pretty much it. Once you have it all reassembled, make sure you really put the D-pad through its paces. Don't be gentle with it. This thing is sturdy. It's built to withstand a lot of punishment. And essentially you want to really like work it in on each direction and all the diagonals, because it's not going to feel right away. So you want it to really get a lot of contact with that conductive rubber and the plastic and the putty, and essentially you want them to kind of mold together better on top of the PCB. So they act as one. It's not moving around and shifting, it's easy to move. And part of the fault here is the type of plastic they used for the D-pad, at least on the G edition, because it is different from the more standard looking Super Nintendo style one and the black edition, as this controller comes in 3 colors, at least at the time of recording. Because the original Super Nintendo D-pad was kind of textured with the little like arrows on each end of the cross shape, and this kind of allowed for better thumb rolls, whereas this one is modeled directly after the original Game Boy D-pad, which, granted, this one is larger, but still was designed for a different type of play. And aside from the little grippy strips, as I call them, it's kind of more of a glossy plastic. So when you're using it stock, it feels weird because it sticks to your thumb a bit more, and so it's much easier to move that D-pad around within the housing. But after the fix, it feels much better because it's a bit grippier and it's not moving at all. So, with all that out of the way and the teardown points I wanted to mention, and oh yeah, and also don't forget to put the L2 and R2 back on. That's pretty much it. As far as a review goes, I guess I'll have my thoughts at the end, but let's get into some gameplay here because I'm going to show you how this actually performs with some Super Nintendo games. Go figure. So let's go ahead and pull that up here with some Super Mario World, because this is by far the Super Nintendo game I've played the most. as I didn't grow up with Super Nintendo, but I did used to play this one at like friends' houses and such when I was younger. So already, this feels really good. Granted, I'm not having to use down and up and such, just basically left and right for now. But I wanted to keep my blue Yosh, at least for a minute. Although, yeah, I'm just gonna ignore that one. It just feels very responsive. Now you can also use this controller in USB mode, I've noticed. Plugging it into the Switch dock and playing that way isn't a true USB mode if you still have the battery in the controller. However, you can take the batteries out and plug it into the Switch, and then it's just straight USB, and very responsive, which is nice if you really want that responsiveness. But I thought since that's kind of an extra step, and then it kind of defeats the purpose of using a wireless controller, I'm just using it in Bluetooth mode right now, so I just thought it would be very much better. Let's see how many 1-ups I can get here. Ooh, I may have made an error. Nope. Good. Excellent. But yeah, it feels very good. As I mentioned, it's much more stiff now, so it's a lot more responsive on the lighter presses and the like micro adjustments that you make, that most people make while playing older platformers like this. No, Yosh! Oh, I got very lucky. Ow! Dang it. Oh, my goodness. I'm just playing poorly now because I'm actually like recording, but let's see. Whoop. Let's get that. It's weird that guy didn't turn into a coin. No, it's over. Okay. It's fine. As you can see, I have way too many lives right now anyway. And that is partially because I keep using the suspend point feature. Because in case it's been a while for you since you've played Super Mario World, every time you quit the game and then restart the game, it gives you 5 lives. Whereas if you open the menu and you create suspend point, it literally is a save state, so you can resume exactly from where you left off, which is very nice. It's a feature Nintendo, I would imagine, would have left out. But seeing as I believe they kind of modeled it at least a little bit around the NES and SNES classic consoles, which had save states for every game. And since the reception was so good for that, I felt like maybe that's why they kept save states in for the Switch Online service games. But yeah, just to show you guys real quick, a little do I have to? I don't remember if I have to actually like close the game to do this or not. But we have a nice little input thing here. Is it controls? Where is it? Oh, it's under... Is it under button mapping? It's not under button mapping, is it? No, it's not. Where is it? I passed it, didn't I? Test input devices, that's the one. Controller buttons. Yeah. So as you can see, doing full circles, no problem. And to the left, and to the right, to the right, to the left. What was it? Left, right, A, B. Up, down, left, right. Wait, no. There's a bunch of weird codes. Anyway, yeah, thumb rolls BY AX, very easy. But yeah, the D-pad much better now, as you can hear, much more snappy. Like before, it didn't really much make any sound, and also it's not shifting around, except as you may have seen in other videos and such, because yes, I did research this on YouTube before making this video. Quite a few people have pointed out, like, yeah, you can just like move it around and it like kind of squeaks on the left and the right sometimes. And that's actually very common. It's just part of like how they're designed, which could have been better. But yeah, the SN30 Pro Plus is an amazing controller. It's so good, and with 8BitDo's Ultimate Software program, you can actually like calibrate a lot of the things. You can add dead zones to the joysticks, to the analog sticks if you want. You can change like the sensitivity of like the L2 and R2 like triggers. You can add macros. You can adjust the rumble strength. It's just so cool that you can actually do all of that with a very reasonably priced controller. Before, I wasn't in love with this controller, but after taking apart a few 8BitDo controllers and finally getting to this one and realizing it was pretty similar to work with, the fact that this thing is $50 is such a great deal, especially for all you're getting, because the components are top notch. You can really tell like 8BitDo went all out for this. The fact that it has motion controls that work brilliantly well. The analog sticks, the quality feels fantastic. The shoulder buttons feel amazing. Well, and triggers. I guess L and R are buttons, but L2 and R2 are triggers. The face buttons feel great. You have everything a Pro controller has except for the NFC reader, so if you don't care about Amiibo, you're not missing out on anything. And you get about a 20-hour battery life out of this thing. I've actually had more than that with my Panasonic Eneloop rechargeable batteries. Those are nickel metal hydride based. But I typically just use the lithium ion battery pack because I have it. I never really have to take it out. That's pretty much it. The only thing I didn't like about this thing was the D-pad and the fact that it's Bluetooth. So, as with any Bluetooth controller, there's going to be a little bit of input latency. If you love the feel of the controller, you can always take out the battery pack, plug it in to the dock, and use it as a USB controller. And the beauty of that is all the functions still work while using that method, even the motion controls. So my one criticism on 8BitDo for this controller is the D-pad should feel better right out the gate. I shouldn't have to open it up to do what I did. And if it was a 2.4 gigahertz and came with a receiver, that would be much better. lower latency. It seems that 2.4 gigahertz controllers also require less power. I believe so. That might even improve the battery life. And yeah, because honestly, I used my M30, the 8-bit Sega Genesis style controller, a lot more nowadays because it is the 2.4 gigahertz variant, and it's practically like using a wired controller. And I just love the D-pad on that thing because it is designed very differently. I didn't have to do anything to it, and it just feels really good, especially for roles for games like Streets of Rage 4. That's all I use. For things that emphasize cardinal directions like Tetris 99, if I'm playing seriously, I do grab my SM30 Pro USB because that is just the best in my opinion. Just like a wired Super Nintendo style controller. And yes, I could do that with this one, but that requires taking out the battery pack, grabbing the cable. Just it's more of a hassle than anything, and I am a little paranoid about screwing up the charging port on this thing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And honestly, even if the charging port on this thing does go bad at some point, it doesn't matter that much. I can just use AA batteries, which is awesome. That they made it like that is amazing. Because a lot of other controllers that have an internal battery, because they're wireless, they don't give you the option to just take it out easily and replace it. So, big advantage on 8BitDo's side for that. But yeah, if you guys have been on the fence, or if you want a Pro controller but you don't want to pay the Pro price, I highly recommend the SN30 Pro Plus, especially since it works on a variety of platforms, and you can even use it on PS4 if you get the Brook Switch to PS4 Super Converter, which is awesome, and also lets you use Wii and Wii U controllers if you have a lot of those lying around and you wish you could use them on modern platforms. So that is going to do it for this episode. But as far as the adapter thing goes, don't worry, I will touch on that in the next episode. Episode 8 is going to be about controller adapters because I have used several. I still use a couple, but I have tried a lot more than what I still own in the past. So I'm going to be compiling those into an episode. It's going to take quite a bit of time because I'm still in the writing phase and like gathering all the information I've gleaned and making sure I'm not putting out outdated information either. So when it goes out, firmware and everything is updated, compatibility, various things like that. It's a lot of work, so don't expect it anytime soon. But thank you guys for stopping by. I have been your host, Anjo McCraps, and if you will excuse me, I'm gonna play some more Super Mario World. So until next time, you have a beautiful day now.